Hey, it's been a minute. But there'll be a separate video talking about where I've been and what's been going on. I just wanted to make this video because this has been my number one priority. I wanted to make a video based on something that I really, really love. And I feel like there's ways to talk about this game that are incorrect. And I feel like that comes from the review standpoint, and I don't really want to do that. I want to just tell you about why I think I've been having a great time with this game and why I think there should be more games like this game. Not necessarily saying that this game's amazing, this game does stuff that other games don't, because this game will be, hit or miss for people. And a lot of people tend to look at games, they want to know like three things before they play a game, and that's: is the story anything interesting, is the gameplay good, how does it run? And I can only say one positive about that, is that the gameplay is great. But another thing that I wanted to discuss specifically, is that whenever there are certain games out there, you have your multiplayer shooters, you have your long story playthrough games, and you have your story or your maybe quicker story pace games that you can like go back and replay, games with new game plus and all that. My favorite idea of how to approach certain games, and I don't know if it's necessarily games fall into this category or if the games are just made this certain way, are session based games. And session based games to me are games that you can spend a couple hours on. You're not really going for a goal necessarily. It's just the gameplay's fun. You're going to play that game for a couple hours. And people tend to have a lot of people have tend to forgotten about this, because when it comes to specifically the modern gaming sphere, a lot of the games have to be either long or they have to be, multiplayer experiences. A lot of people tend to have a lot of developers and studios really have forgotten about the art of session-based games, which most often tend to fall into, I would categorize like, a lot of like arcade racing games, but more specifically open world games that have a lot of, not necessarily a lot of content, but a lot of time to explore the game, do whatever you really want to do outside of the story. It could be side missions, or it could just be exploring the maps in general. That's one of the reasons why Just Cause 2 is one of my favorite games of all time, because of how big and how cool the map is, that you can just take a break from the story and explore the whole map and just have a lot of fun, get into fights with the notoriety system, in different locations. And that's something that a lot of games have forgotten about in recent years. When I think of a game that's even like I said before, when I think about a good game that I played last that had a session based play style to it, would have been probably Ghost Recon Wildlands. Ghost Recon Wildlands, while it has its story, has its cool world, even once you beat the story, the world and the map is so cool that you will maybe want to replay those missions in different play styles. You could be doing you could be doing it in a stealth manner, or you could be doing it in guns blazing. Um, it's really up to you. Now, that brings me to the Precinct. When I saw this game, I was hooked on what they were showing for the gameplay. I mean, I thought it was cool, like the setting too. I didn't know that it was set in the 80s. I thought it was set in the 70s at first. But seeing the cars, yeah, this is gonna be cool. Um, and I kept checking it out the more, it was getting closer to the release date. Then I found out about the story and I was like, all right, the story's not gonna be for me. But then I watched a video, I believe it was, I can't remember, I don't know if you got to play it early or if it was the day it came out. It might have been the day it came out because I don't think I bought the game the day it came out. I think I bought it maybe the day after it came out. When I saw the playthrough for this game, I was like, okay, because originally I was put off by the overall system on how you arrest suspects. I thought that was going to be too complicated for me to like remember stuff. I thought it was gonna be too advanced. Um, but when I saw how simple it was and how fun, like just a police chase in general could be, I was like, this is it. With all the open world games that tend to have failed in recent years, this is a game that even if it's developed by an indie studio and it's, has a relatively small map, this is a game that I'm going to spend a lot of time on and I'm going to love this game. And then I played it. And, you know, I have to say, for the most part, that I like honestly, it's kind of amazing. And I'm not necessarily someone that's very easily I'm not very easily impressed by whatever game I play. I have to spend time with the game in order to solidify my thoughts. But with this game, just doing the patrol missions, I was like, okay, yeah, the gameplay's fun. Um, I didn't care about the story. I something I did kind of enjoy though, was the breaks between patrols and the story. I didn't really care for the story missions unless they were pursuit chases. Um, but whenever it came to the point where just having to like, okay, there's been a homicide, you got to go investigate the homicide. Yeah, that was cool. It's not. It's kind of weird that they didn't necessarily include that within the patrolling, but it works for the story, and it was kind of, it was interesting and it was well done in a way that whenever the missions or the patrols were broken up, maybe you do like what, maybe 5-10 minutes like investigation, finding out like where the next boss or lieutenant is, and you have to go see like whatever. Those, it adds to the story. It was good, but the story just was not interesting for me, and it's hard to recommend a game that I absolutely love the gameplay, and if you are looking for just a game that you will randomly, you go on, play a couple hours a day, this is a good game for that. But if you want a solid gaming experience as a whole, this is not a game that fits that criteria. I think it takes about 5 hours to beat. I was splitting my time up within 3 days. I bet it. I was just having more fun with the patrolling, Um, and whenever I finished the story, like I already guessed the plot twist when I got introduced to the characters, as well as the or one of the plot twists. The open, wide variety of ways to handle situations is something that, I feel like modern games try to do nowadays. Sometimes they offer um, way too much equipment, like Just Cause 4, for an example. But if it's done in a way that's like, okay, you can do a mission this way, you can do a mission that way. I I feel like there's really there's no bad side to those types of I'm blanking on the word. What's it called? Like variety is like the first thing that comes to mind, but variety in ways you deal with missions, I love that. All right, I want to talk about the gameplay. Now, basically, there's a whole bunch of different crimes that can be committed during a patrol. There's different types of patrols, but if I'm being honest, my favorite is just like being in a car. Throughout the patrols, if I remember correctly, I think throughout, or maybe just like the tutorial patrols, the quote unquote tutorial patrols will show you the different types of patrols. But for the most part, I just like being in my car. It's a lot easier. Sometimes running is just not worth it, and the I'll talk about one of the cons in the gameplay afterwards that kind of gives kind of expands on my reasoning for why I prefer to be in a car. But yeah, basically, if I had to list off, there's like keeping the streets safe, night shifts where again keeping the streets safe. There's speeding infractions, which I don't do. There's littering, which I don't do. There's gang cleanup or something like that. There's the I think robbery cleanup, like those types of things. Yeah, those are that's basically it. And then there's just your standard patrol. And it's funny because I told my friend this. Ever since the tutorial mission where you get introduced to the speeding infractions, I had no speeders until after I beat the story, where I only had one speed. I had at the time I had one speeding experience, and then there was another speeding experience. But literally, after all those after the tutorial mission, after all those patrols, I never ran into a speeder. So yeah, regarding crimes, there's a lot of crimes. There's vandalism, there's assault, and within the different types, there's specific ones that fit into certain ones. But basically, like whenever you're patrolling and you'll get the notifications, yeah, there's vandalism, there's street fights, there's drug deals, there's contraband deals, there's speeding, which is very rare for me. Carjacking is very common there, but don't get your carjacking mixed up with vehicle theft because those two are different, which I'll get to after. There's the gang on gang violence. There's aggravated burglary. There's standard burglary. There's mugging. Mugging also was pretty rare until after I beat the story. Mugging. Very rarely will you ever really run into actual murders. Oh yeah, there's hit and run. Another common one is driving under the influence. And evading arrest is probably the most common. I think that's... Then there's also... I feel like there's also times where, like, littering too. There's also times where, like, you'll run into, like, littering or even a car accident. And then you search the guy and, like, you're about to find him. And then you find, he has an illegal weapon or drugs or some sort of counterfeit cash, counterfeit item of sort. But yeah, those are pretty much all the crimes. I'm pretty sure I listed all of them. In terms of like, they're like when you think of like the bank robbery for example, big stuff like a bank robbery only happens in the story. But and in terms of the gang violence, it's just like, gang warfare. There's no like most often there's no like not contrast. There's no like crime that relates to another crime. Often or not, that's random, and that's actually one of the cons that I want to get into. So, biggest con with the gameplay, that a lot of people tend to mention are how random it is, which is probably my favorite one of the main reasons why I bought this game, for how random the crime rate is. And that's can be a positive and a negative depending on who you ask. If you are capable at managing the chaos, it's fun. If you are streaming, it's very entertaining. But if you are genuinely trying to take care of one crime and another crime happens that affects that other crime, that's when it gets annoying. I have evidence where when I live streamed this game once, I was dealing with the DUI, and I chased him through a plaza where there's a random shootout happening at the plaza, and they shot my car and blew my car up while I was chasing the friggin' guy on the DUI. Now, yes, that's annoying. Same thing for if you're arresting a guy and some random idiot comes over and assaults you. It's annoying if they shoot you. It's less annoying if they're just trying to, if they stab you or they're just trying to punch you, and that kind of ties into like AI issues. Some people really can't stand your partner's AI, and it is annoying. There's a lot of inconsistencies that I've heard people talk about that I also have issues with, and I've also noticed, even back to the Invictus video, which are hidden runs that get committed that aren't actually hidden runs, or car accidents that get committed that aren't actually car accidents. The same thing goes for, and I friggin' hate this, is if one of my biggest issues with this game specifically, and it dates back to shooting. I hate shooting, and that is unlawfully injuring the suspect. I have a lot of beef with this. Just when you think that this game, is easy enough to play through, they hit you with this nonsense. So my biggest issue with this game, and you could probably blame me for my weapon of choice, which is a Scorpion, also in an AK-47. However, I still think that it's nonsense that if you're like locking eyes with the suspect, you're exchanging gunfire back and forth, just so after you fire your bullet, he decides to surrender, then it's unlawfully injuring the suspect, or worst case, even killing the suspect, which happened on one occasion, and you lose 40 experience. Now, I really don't care about the experience in this game. I'm already max level. I have everything. I'm just saying from, not a morally standpoint, I'm just saying from in kind of an obvious standpoint that is annoying for people. It's annoying for me. Another one that isn't as annoying, but it's just a pet peeve of mine, and it really frustrates me. And this is coming from a common sense side of things, is the fact that whenever you're dealing with a carjacker or someone that stole a vehicle that was in park, which is not vehicle theft, those two are entirely different. The main issue that I have, and it's going to sound so stupid, but it really frustrates me, is when you know that they stole a car, you don't bother asking them to open the trunk because you know it doesn't belong to them, and you get a response from your partner saying that, oh, you never know what you may find in a suspect's car. You should always check the trunk. And I'm like, bro, it's not his car. I'm just saying from a moral standpoint where you know that you shouldn't charge him with whatever's in the car if it's not his. I mean, I guess you could look at the side of things, well, maybe he hid something in the trunk, but if also you have recorded evidence of him stealing the car, he didn't put anything in the trunk. So it frustrates me. And it's one of those things that just, it doesn't make sense, and it just aggravates me. But that being said, um, if those are really my only complaints about a game, then and you look at it a game like this from that standpoint, I think you can call it a hidden gem. I would call it a cult classic. I think it really is a cult classic. My another big thing that if people haven't already said, that do agree on, is that it really should have been co-op. There really should be an online co-op option, because your partner isn't very. Sometimes he's very good. Sometimes he's very dumb. Um, that takes me back to another thing. I've seen my partner unlawfully either shoot a civilian or shoot the suspect, and if he doesn't get flagged for it, why should I get flagged for it? That's another thing too. There's also another weird thing when it comes to police pursuits, where sometimes, I don't know how to exactly describe it, but whenever you're chasing, sometimes they'll be like, I don't know if it's supposed to be designed for the suspect to specifically hit a civilian, but like one time I thought that the suspect hit a civilian, right? Because they jump out of the way, and it's so hard to tell whether or not they got hit or not, especially you're going at fast pace speed, you're making like hairpin turns, going down alleyways, that I genuinely thought that the suspect hit the civilian, but because like the suspect jumped and like grazed my car, it docked me points for injuring the civilian, which didn't make any sense. There was also sometimes, most recently, I'm not going to say like it happened a bunch of times. It only happened really once, and it happened a couple days ago, where a suspect literally fired their gun at me. Oh, that reminds me of another thing too that I have beef with. And I shot him, and it didn't count as assault. The other thing too is, and this one's also an issue, is whenever you're, I was just thinking about it. Whenever oh yeah. Whenever you're called to take care of, whether it be a gang battle or a street fight, if even though, like any other crime, for example, like let's say you interrupt a drug deal, and even if the person didn't have drugs on them, you can't charge them, right? Even though they were participating in the drug deal. Same thing goes for those assault type of deals, where even though it's labeled as an assault, if the person didn't fire a gun or the person didn't hit the other person back, you can't charge them. Because if you charge them, it'll be incorrect offense, which I think is stupid, but I also can't tell necessarily if that's right or not. So, yeah. Anyways, there's really no way of talking about this game without just, you can tell that I love this game because how critical and how everything that I remember about this game, of like my issues with it, because I enjoy this game so much. The gameplay for me is fun enough to kill 3 hours. It doesn't matter how many patrols, really. It doesn't matter. Even the patrols that I do badly, whether it be, um, those inconsistent issues, it makes me just want to, like, okay, I'll do another patrol, and I'll see if I can get a 0 for poor conduct. And I've done it once. The other times it's always like 97 to 275, but or like maybe 40. But for me, I don't. It's not those things. I'm not very I don't pay attention to that. I'm paying more attention to it whenever it's like after you arrest the suspect. It's like, here's the things you did well. Here's the things you didn't do well. When it's added up in general, I'm like, unless it's like one of those issues where it's like, no, he assaulted me and it should count as assault. Oh, that reminds me of another thing too. When two crimes overlap, when you're close to the other crime, it will like show up and it will say like, press this. I think it's R1, to activate, to start like this new crime investigation. I didn't know. One time I was doing a police pursuit, and there's two separate carjackings, and I don't know if it was because it might have been like I'm gonna bet that it was probably a street fight, and then it just became a carjacking where I was literally chasing two cars, chasing each other, and but they were separate crimes, which was weird. And in some cases where if someone assaults someone or someone kills a civilian, it's like, well, I thought he was a part of the aggravated burglary, but I guess not. I guess he was another. I guess he was a mugger or something that was dealing an entirely different crime, because of the radius of these when these crimes tend to happen. Goes back to my issues with like the randomness. It does kind of become a little bit of an issue where it's like so many things are happening at once, and it's fun. I find that fun, but I know people from gameplay standpoints will be like, this is too much. This is gonna get annoying. This is a problem. And it is a problem. Like, we have to acknowledge that it is a problem. As much as it's fun and it's entertaining to watch people experience these things, it's annoying. It really is annoying when you don't know what suspect is a part of what crime. All this stuff is happening at once. And if you try to deal with one crime, then you have to leave the other crime, and yeah. Which gives another reason for why it would make more sense to do online co-op. Because then you can have one player dealing with, one crime, and the other player dealing with the other crime. It also makes it easier for whenever you are dealing with, whether it be a gang shootout where suspects are trying to escape, or you're dealing with a street fight. Most often it's always street fights or burglaries or drug deals where there's multiple suspects. In a street fight, it can range from like 3 different suspects, all fleeting, and you never know if they're going to carjack or if they're going to take a civilian hostage, and you can't necessarily deal with everything at once because your partner will sometimes go for another suspect. It is easier whenever he goes for the person that surrendered, and then you are chasing the others. The other thing too is I kind of wish there was a system that you could specifically ask. Oh, that brings us to the support system, because I completely forgot that I didn't mention that. The support system is so much fun, but also kind of useless at times, depending on what you choose. Spike strips, let's be honest, it's pretty much useless unless it's, a story mission, would say. Patrols, they're useless. Roadblocks tend to only work if they're blocking alleyways or bridgeways. But for the most part, if you're blocking a street, they're just going to go down an alleyway. Like, it's not going to work. My favorite is obviously riot vans, police cruisers, and even calling in an officer. I never really called in an officer. I would always call the police cruisers, but no, it really helps to call in an officer if you're chasing people. Because a lot of the time they'll just hit them with the RKO and then you could just arrest them on the spot. However, the other one that I didn't use a whole lot, but now I really started to use, and this is where I kind of wish I could like direct where I would like this to go, is the chopper. The chopper is very useful, but only if you're not arresting a suspect. It's if you are arresting a suspect, it's kind of useless, and this is where I wish you could just like, okay, if I call in my helicopter, can I just tell my helicopter to go, chase the other suspect while I'm arresting this guy, because at the end of the day, the feature that I only found out about recently is the delegating paperwork, because I completely forgot about it, which is where if you're dealing with multiple suspects, you arrest a guy, you'll delegate the paperwork to your partner, so you don't have to you don't have to you don't have to like point out his crimes or anything. He does that for you, so all you have to do is really search the suspect or check the ID. I at least do that for the bare minimum. I don't know if you have. I think one time I checked the ID, but he also searched him. But I don't know. I do that, and then I chase the other suspects that I'm chasing. I think my game difficulty is on whatever default is, because a lot of the time, thankfully, a lot of the suspects tend to just go hide in dumpsters and you can get them there. But once they're in the subway, you're pretty much screwed. Only once did I ever stop a suspect in the subway. Once they get to the subway, they're pretty much gone. So you can't always, yeah. Once they go on the subway, I just like, okay, I'll deal with the other suspect, But yeah, that pretty much sums up everything about this game. I love this game. It's such a great game. It's a breath of fresh air for session-based games that I've been honestly waiting for. When it comes to discussions with video games, when it comes talking with people, a lot of people's like, oh, I'll play Marvel Rivals, playing, I don't even know what else they're playing. Marvel Rivals, Call of Duty, Fortnite. Like, no. I've been waiting for a session-based game, and this is the session-based game. I play a couple hours. That there were some other games that I also wanted to talk about, but I think they deserve their own separate videos. That's Deliver at All Cost and Hypercharge. Specifically with Hypercharge, I think it makes more sense to make a video on after I beat the game. But Deliver at All Cost is a different discussion entirely. It's kind of a session-based game, but not in open world sense, in a linear sense when it comes to the missions and, taking your time with it. But this video is about the Precinct, and that's pretty much everything that I wanted to talk about the Precinct. It's a lot of fun. Definitely get it if it's on sale. I wouldn't recommend buying it unless you've been, hankering for a session-based craze. When you want to talk about the performance, yes, sometimes it dips. Specifically, it dips whenever the suspects are shooting, and it more specifically like carjacking with the suspects shooting. But I love this game. This game's gameplay too much to just it lasts a couple seconds. Who cares? I'm not nitpicky like that. I'm very patient when it comes to when a game works and when a game doesn't work. And then whenever I spend as much time on this game as I have, I just love it. I love this game. I love this game's issues. Like I said before, the story, nothing to write home about, but it's fun. The patrols are so much fun. People tend to get bored of these things because, they associate a lot of games with games you have to speed run and play tons of hours to beat the story. But a lot of people forgot about the 2000s era of session-based games like Burnout, or even just fun open world games like Just Cause 2, where there's room to break up your day to play these games. Play a little bit. You don't have to play the whole thing. And then take a break, play something else, maybe go back to it. And yeah, I'm honestly addicted to this gaming experience, and it kind of makes me want to seek out and play more games like that. I did start Burnout 3. I'm almost done Burnout 3. This game really replaced it replaced the whole session based void in me. I love games a lot of session based games, when it comes to playing video games. And I missed that, and it's back. Thank you. That's all. Peace.